Welcome back to the pod, everyone. Today, I'm delighted that we've got Mads Davidsen, who is the Group Head of Football at the Right to Dream. Mads, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Great to have you along. We were talking earlier, and Right to Dream is something that we're going to get into, and it's a foundation that really maybe not many people know about the origins and actually where it's gone to now. It's fascinating. But I'd like to start with yourself, Mads. So you're working within football. What's your journey been like? How have you landed in this position of group head of football?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, there's a lot of coincidences, as I think we have to, at least as old as I'm getting, I think we have to accept fate sometimes more than we like. We sometimes think we can plan our life, and I'm a very structured person, so I've always kind of believed that I took the path that I wanted. And maybe I would say you can take a direction in your life you can probably help or influence, but there's a lot of coincidences if I go through each part of my job and how I learned a certain person to know in a certain coincidence moment that later on gave me a job or whatever it is, but obviously a small kid who enjoyed the ball and just played football. It was in the 80s in Denmark, not in a small city, not too much to do, no PlayStation, no phones, and not too much activity. So we just played the game on streets or in the park or at the stadium or wherever we could in the garden. Yeah, so just always loved the game. Always curious about the game. Watch games since I was 8-9 years old. And looking back, of course, in some way more than just a fan. I didn't know that obviously at the time, but I would, for example, learn myself to kick like Ronald Koeman because I analyzed how he kicked the ball in 1992. Or I watched some players during a World Cup and thinking, how can they get away from these situations? They use their butt to hold away opponents or whatever, these kind of things. So these details and the bit nerdy stuff in some way always encouraged me even as a kid. And then, a mix between that. I obviously wasn't good enough to go pro, and a lot of, I know that today, too little, let's say, deliberate training, as we called it in Right to Dream. When I was a kid, we just played the game, but we didn't have any educated coaches in my small village. We had parents that just tried their best and set up, organized the games and all that. And of course, you get better, but I know today how much deliberate training is effective compared to just playing randomly. So that kind of led into that. I went to university and then I studied communication and journalism and actually worked a little bit as a football journalist, free time. And then I started to get more. I was actually a current colleague of mine that used to be my mentor, Flemming Petersen, who is the Right to Dreams technical director for the group, and he used to be the head coach of FC Nordsjælland. And my coach was my first pro coach I met when I was 19 years old, and came to a club called Elsinore, where he was the coach, and he kind of opened the eyes. He opened my eyes to what football could be, how it could be viewed. I've never heard these sentences before about how a game was systematic and structured and so on. So he got me kind of curious, and I asked him a lot of questions, and I was injured a lot. So in some way, I had more time on his office than on the pitch. So I ended up just watching Ajax. This was the time where you had the DVD. So watching Ajax drills with him on the DVD, and then later on, I gave up the game and went university way. And and then suddenly he called me one day and kind of convinced me to go coaching. He said, "You're one of the players that think about the game, and you can scan the game, you can see the game. You'd be a really good coach." So I started in the local club, B93 in Copenhagen, and just did once a week assistant coach for an under 12 team. And then I got motivated, and I suddenly was offered to be the head coach of a quite talented group in B93. And then, felt the drive of actually, instead of improving myself, improving others, how motivating that was. And I could obviously also see that I had flair for it. The kids improved and the team improved. So that also gave you more drive, of course, to continue. And then it started, then you start to think, oh, is this really be a career for you? And then I got an offer from Brøndby, which at that time and still in some ways a big club, and went there, coaching there on the 19 team, and then I had the opportunity suddenly out of nothing to come to China. And I always told myself, I want to go abroad. I want to explore the world through football. So took that opportunity and then basically just progressed from there
Wow.
into football. So a long answer, but it's also been a long journey.
When you was at Bromby, did you coincide with Thomas Frank's era there?
No, Thomas is actually is funny. Thomas and I grew up in the small village, very close
Wow.
to each other. So Thomas is 10 years older than me. You probably can't see it, but he is. So we didn't know each other. There was too big of a gap generation. But as soon as we got into coaching, we kind of quickly found out, hey, are you from that? Because it's a very small village,
Yeah.
a little bit of the outskirts. So we've kind of quick found out who we were and then started to connect and speak. So no, I actually left the year before Thomas Frank
Oh.
came in. So yeah, still still a good friend today.
What was it like going to China? I mean, culturally, that's got to be polar opposite to working in Denmark. Was it, or like, what was your experience
Yeah,
there?
massive, of course. I never traveled so much in my life. Well, I traveled, but not to these places. So I never been to Asia, for example. So to kind of turn up in an airport with 2 suitcases in China was, of course, a big culture shock.
Yeah.
But it's also what I wanted to do. I like to get out of my comfort zone. I like to test. Like I like that feeling of this is difficult. This is going to be very, very difficult to solve. I like that feeling. I even like it when if I do for example, do my running just to stay fit in my age. I like to suffer. I don't know why, but I like the feeling of suffering. So, for example, if I'm in my house in Spain, I run when it's the hottest. I know
Yeah, the
it's
challenge.
scientifically and physically. I know everyone will say it's insane because you don't get the same out of the training and you cannot perform and all that. But I like the feeling of suffering, and I think it was the same here. I suffered, of course. It's tough to be alone in a completely new country in a culture you have no clue what to do. So I did my research. I interviewed some people that worked in China. I studied some books, and I learned myself quickly what I would call the football Chinese curriculum. So I could speak kind of, I could
Nice.
coach in Chinese, you could say. I couldn't speak the language, but I quickly learned that those you as a coach you use you use the same 100 words or something like that often. But I ended up spending 7 years in China. So of course, a big part of my football life and a big part of my adult life as well is spent in China, and a place that still means a lot for me. And my wife joined me as well there.
So, did you go then from China to Right to Dream? Was that the next move?
No, then I had I actually started my own company, Optima Football, after I left China. I spent 6 months of kind of analyzing football and found out where are the gaps in football. What is football lacking? Why is football so unstructured in some ways? Why is it so random? Why is it so short-term thinking? And kind of analyzed that by visiting a lot of clubs. I invested a lot of my salary and my money in going to trips. So I spent on my holidays visiting clubs, watching training, or speaking to sport directors or owners or whoever I could get in touch with, which gave me good insights of what they struggle with. And the more I realized it was that at that time, at least this was in 2018, the problem was there was too big of a distance uh, in more than one way between the boardroom and the training ground.
Hmm.
And nobody kind of oversaw the long-term strategy because the board was not capable, because they didn't have the football competencies often. They were business people. They were financially educated people,
Yeah.
strategically educated maybe, but not in a football context. And the head coach would protect himself by, I need something now because otherwise I get fired. And that kind of mismatch just created that there's no sustainable, very few sustainable places. So I kind of tried to create a role where I came in as a kind of a long-term strategic advisor for the board, and also if whatever the club needed at the time could also help at this time you started to invest more, of course, in sport directors and these kind of roles, especially in the UK.
Mm.
So did that for a couple of years, was a good experience, and then COVID came, and the first thing you do when there's corona is you look at your sheet and thinking, consultants, we can probably we can probably skip those. So I could quickly see I had actually 3-4 agreements where I could have legally kept them, but the clubs were almost like begging me to, can we put it on hold because we
Got
really
you.
like to work with you, but we cannot pay. We're gonna bleed money now. There's no fans coming to the game. So
Mm.
I accepted that. It's fine. I'm not doing this for the money. But then I was of course also thinking like how at that time we also had no idea, was COVID going on for 10 years. We didn't know. So I got an opportunity that I actually declined early in my life to be the sport director of Al Jazeera club in the UAE. So that came basically that same time during COVID. So me and my family decided that it was a good. We always wanted to live in the Middle East and again
Yeah,
challenge
it's lovely.
ourselves in a new culture. So we went there and had 2.5 really good seasons there with Al Jazeera. Um, and then I joined Right to Dream after that in 2022.
What was just before we get on to Right to Dream? What was it like at Al Jazeera? Because I think over the last potentially 5-10 years, the actual quality of football in the Middle East, UAE, and some of the surrounding countries actually quite improved. Let's be honest, there's been quite a heavy investment as well in some more players from Europe actually
Yeah.
traveling there and playing, and that's probably helped the profile. But yeah, what was it like from a footballing perspective, from your experience of being in Denmark and China and your consulting? What's the
Yeah.
quality of football like in UAE?
No, it's they're actually talented. They're a bit like we would say here in Europe. We would say like the Balkan area, which is like ball playing kind of natural instinct is the same there. They're all technically gifted. They're good dribblers. A little bit like now, Right to Dream. We can come back to that. We have an academy in Egypt. It's a bit similar, similar style,
Okay.
similar player profiles. The unfortunate part for the UE specifically is to be frank, is the size. There is very very few Emiratis living there. You know, we have, I think UE has 10 million inhabitants, and I think 9 million are expats.
Wow.
So the local is just extremely small local player pool, and of course that's just a challenge.
Yeah.
Compare, I just came. You mentioned the other country that came from China, where we had 1.4 billion people. So
Bit
that's
different.
of course their upside. If they get it right, then of course their upside is the size, massive opportunity, massive potential.
Yeah.
But again, good experience to live in another culture and deal with the challenges in football and working with a board and obviously the club is owned by Sheikh Mansour, who also owns City Group and all that. So it's a great experience. And yeah, I still have we sometimes still go back for holiday, because also
Yeah.
we started to make family there. So some of the kids are, one is born there, one grew up there, and of course creates a good connection to the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to touch on something you mentioned before we get on to Right to Dream. Um, as fans, I'm a football fan myself, a massive football fan, and there's nothing better than having one of the youth academy products come through and play for the first team. I completely understand that for managers, sometimes it's a short career, and you have to get results straight away. But I'm just surprised that a lot of the teams haven't thought about that long term um, investment in their academy and the
Yeah.
strategy around that. I think especially I can't remember who I saw in an interview. They were saying football in the modern day has kind of shifted a little bit to be like a bit like a media agency in a sense. You get a lot of the football clubs. The way they make money is through big sponsorships, etc., and the way that they're running their businesses, as you mentioned, is by that big focus on media. And we've seen it a lot in the UK, where teams like Wrexham would be
Mm,
nowhere
mm,
near where they are now unless they had that investment. And obviously the Wrexham show that they've got has been a massive part of that.
yeah.
Um, is that is that like, are you feeling that dynamic within your sort of within your role? That is football shifting slightly? Is it becoming more business focused, or do you think otherwise?
Yeah, there I actually can start where I am now, because Right to Dream in that perspective is a bubble, because we are so clear on what we do and who we are. And we have also an internal rule that we never compare ourselves with others. Also because we don't think we're better. We just chosen a certain direction. We chosen a specific strategy, and we are clear about it. So in some way, I sometimes think that it's not the real football world we are in. Within Right to Dreams communities, we are of course part of it, because we have to play the games and we have to handle the same transfer window as everyone else and all that. But we are very, very different. And again, I'm not saying it's very important to say not better or worse
But
or
you're
not.
just different.
We
You've got a
just
different
very,
way of
very
doing
different.
things.
That has been the biggest joy for me compared to my other jobs. I enjoyed everything. I can come back to each of my club today, and I have a great relationship, and I had a great time there. And then obviously we were also most of them successful and won titles and all these normal football industry related things. But there's not any place that has given me more meaning than being in Right to Dream.
Yeah.
That's a very special for me to connect my, like you said, I'm also a football geek. To connect that part of being privileged, that someone actually want to pay you for doing stuff you find very interesting. And of course, over time, you've also developed competencies to do. But then add to that, that now it makes meaning that you're actually helping kids. I can give you a specific example. One of my trips to our academy in Ghana, where they had visitors from the kids have visitors from their families during the days I was there. And then I was watching a training, and this elderly grandmother of one of the kids came walking over, like she was quite old, so she walked very, very slowly towards me. And she kind of grabbed my wrist, kind of a little bit hard for this elderly woman, and looked me in the eye and say, "Are you the boss here?" And I quickly said, "No, no, no, I'm not. There's no boss here. Something we all do together." And then she just kind of interrupted me, and she said, "God bless you for what you do for these kids." And that moment is just like it's very special. And I by the way, she didn't mean me as a person, but Right to Dream,
Yeah.
like what we do for the kids. And that's something I remember. Like I went from that experience feeling okay. It was fun to win the championship in China or win the Super Cup in the UAE. Or it's also fun to at Brøndby. I was privileged to work with some very good players like Pierre-Emile Højbjerg or Andreas
Oh,
Christensen, who's in Barcelona now, and these players I had at Brøndby. So of course, that's also fun to follow them in their path out in the big world. Or now in Right to Dream, where if we sell Lucas Højbjerg to Strasbourg or Mohamed Kudus, we are proud of course, in Tottenham, and all these kind of things. But that is an addition when you
mm,
start to see that if I actually do my job a little bit better every day, can we help more kids? With the owners be willing to invest in one more academy where we can help kids
yeah.
from underprivileged communities into a chance in life, basically. Because that is what it is in
Yeah, you're
in
completely
Egypt.
changing lives.
In Egypt, in Ghana, in some part of San Diego also, it's a bit more mixed there with communities. In Denmark, a little bit different. It's a higher average standard society level the kids come from in general in Denmark. But the other locations is literally kids that did not have many opportunities in life. That is kind of been a game changer for in my working career coming to Right to Dream.
And for those that don't know anything about Right to Dream, could you give us just a real sort of quick snapshot of like the journey of Right to Dream? Because
Yeah.
it's very unique. It's not like one dimensional. If you could do that, would be great, because I'm sure there's some listeners who know absolutely nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So Right to Dream was founded 25 years ago in Ghana under the same logic as we do now, that we go in areas where there's not many opportunities, and we provide opportunities for kids to get a pathway in life, either on education or football. So we always have the double-sided pathway for all our kids. We don't go hardcore in and thinking he's going to be the next Mohamed Kudus. We hope, but in case it doesn't turn out, then we also have an educational system that ensures him that he can go on the educational pathway. So that way, Right to Dream offers opportunities for kids in areas without much opportunity. And then, of course, as time has went, the academy in Ghana then bought a club in Denmark because they found out when the players turned 18, they kind of needed the next steps in their career and they didn't have many opportunities. So they bought FC Nordsjælland in the Danish Super League, which has been a fantastic story over the last 10 years in terms of implementing both the local academy in Denmark and the Scandinavian players connecting to the West African players. And that kind of success is now where when I came in and we opened up an academy in Egypt, and we want to follow that model and start to add in Egyptian players. And then we found out that the academies are doing such a good job that we are developing, you can say, too many good players, which means there will start to be a bottleneck in FC Nordsjælland, which is the exact opposite of what we're trying to do. We're trying to offer minutes to young players in an industry where many don't dare to play young players. And of course, we cannot say that while suddenly we have a queue of getting minutes. So we kind of said we need another club, we need another pathway, so we can feed the kids into more than one club, and that's why the ownership decided to buy a franchise in MLS, and got San Diego starting last season in 2025, and now that's building up to be a new pathway on top of that. So that's kind of the model. We have 4 academies, as was mentioned, in San Diego, in Denmark, in Ghana, and in Egypt, and that is the foundation. We spend majority of our investment into academies, so it's kind of reverse model. We're not spending it on the first team. We're not buying expensive players for our first teams. We're spending it in the academy and building up, creating a foundation from the bottom. And then, of course, we add stability players to our first teams to ensure we can, for example, we can play in the MLS or we can play in the Danish Super League. But the aim is to create a homegrown team based on academy graduates. And then, of course, we love the cultural diversity. I mean, I think it's not a written KPI in our global strategy, but I would say it's my personal kind of dream for me that in 5-7 years time, when Egypt and San Diego have enough time to build up their academies, we will see a San Diego first team, we will see a FC Nordsjælland first team, and we also have a club in Egypt now, FC Masar, that kind of have a lineup that represents all our markets. So it would be 2-3 West Africans, 2-3 Egyptians, 2-3 Danes, 2-3 American or Mexican players in the squad. Would of course be a fantastic proof of what we're trying to do.
And just to add on to some of the things that you said there, so I've got a post. This is actually a post this is where I came across you on LinkedIn. So just to put this in context for our listeners, percentage of minutes played by under 21 players in the last 5 years, FC Nordsjælland is 44.7%, which is crazy. There's some other teams in there that obviously are doing some great things. And there's another post here, which was the clubs generating the most graduate value relative to their size. And your graduate to squad ratio was 7.5. The next one below that was Vélez, who's in Argentina, who do produce some good talents, which is 4.9. So it just shows the great work that you're doing and the rest of the team are doing at actually getting some great talent come through this system. And for fans that are listening, I've got a couple of names here that you may be aware of, and I'll probably miss some. Mohamed Kudus, Adingra, Sulemana, Nuama, Osman, I think he was on loan at Birmingham last year as well. Diamande, who played the other night for Rangers. Dorgales, who's a player who transferred to Braga in Portugal. Some real top talents. And I was going to ask you, man, so like in terms of these individuals that I've named here, they're not all Ghanaian players. Some of them are Ivorian. I'm not sure. Are they all Ivorian or Ghanaian? How does it work? Is there like a base in Ghana that these players travel from, or do you have different like scouting spots?
Yeah, we also have a small setup in Ivory Coast where we can scout and train players, and then of course join FC Nordsjælland at 18
Yeah,
due to FIFA regulations, of course. So that's kind of just because we found out we are strong in Ghana and we have a lot of knowledge in Ivory Coast as well. So there's always been kind of a connection to the Ghana contribution that we also are pretty good represented in Ivory Coast. But of course, it's like you said when you mention these names, that it's good work. And then you can say you only tap from the West Africa there because you also have a good track record from FC Nordsjælland's Danish/Scandinavian academy.
yeah,
So Mikkel
Damsgaard.
Damsgaard, for
Mm,
example, Mathias Jensen, both from Brentford. We have Martin Frese playing in Verona in Italy. And in general, you could list up just as many. And as Norwegian player, Andreas Schjellerup, starting 11 for Benfica, a
yeah,
Norwegian winger. So it's both track records that are going well. That's of course why we think, okay, if we add Egypt and San Diego to that, and we can be just as good, then we'll produce a lot of top talents that can gain our first teams, of course, and get minutes quickly and improve our first teams and get their opportunity, because that's what we want to do. We want to develop players for the highest level. We have now currently 15 players playing in top 5 leagues in Europe.
wow,
And that's what we want to aim for. We want to keep pushing the standards. We're not too happy when a player in some way only makes it for the Super League in Denmark. That's of course also great because it's important everyone gets a pathway. But we wanna be much more ambitious in terms of that we want to produce players that can play at the highest level.
yeah,
And and then of course back to the where we are different. So the education part is just as important, and we're also proud of, like, right now we have 55 students, mainly from West Africa, who use their football to get a free scholarship in the US and get a free education through their
wow,
football. And that's just as important pathway for us. Unfortunately, if I'm obviously representing the football part of Right to Dream here, they don't pay the bill as much as Mohamed Kudus does. Unfortunately, there's no transfer fee when you educate yourself to doctor. But we're just as proud of them because they also represent who we are. And where I think we are a little bit different than most academies, that it means so much the educational pathway as well as the football do. And then we took some deliberate decisions that also makes us creates clarity internally, but also what I hear from parents and agents and kids, of course, it also gives us a attractive place, I think, in the football landscape. That, for example, we have a no deselection rule. So when you're in, and you cannot get deselected, which I can see also on your eyes is very, very unique in football, because as we
wow,
know, most academies, also the ones I've been at, you evaluate constantly. So, okay, that player has not performed, or that player is not developing, so let's change him. He goes out. Oh, I saw this player playing. Let's take him in. A constant change of players. Where we believe in early intake, early talent ID, and then deliberate training, character development, education, and then maintain. Even it goes in periods up and down, we keep maintaining the same players. Unless, of course, that the parents or the player wants to leave, then of course they're welcome to leave. But we don't tell anyone to leave. And I think it what it creates is an environment of trust, because I'm a parent now also, and I can see with my kids as well, that if you're only working from season to season, there's constant pressure on the kid. You need to perform, and now he hasn't played for the last 6 weeks. What about next season? He's still part of the squad. All these kind of things create uncertainty and distrust and fear. And no human beings can develop in fear or uncertainty. So I know from the parents' feedback and that this is a game changer for us, that they know as soon as they're in, and they're in
yeah.
for good. And
It's
then
all
we have
about their
another,
development.
Then we have another rule that our chairman also, Mr. Mohamed Mansour, is I know is very important for him, that every kid has a pathway. So we call it no kid left behind, which means that we guarantee everyone have some kind of pathway.
Wow. It's amazing work. Has anyone from other clubs reached out to you guys to learn from what you're doing, to think about doing things in a similar way?
Yeah, I would say first we have a lot of visitors. We are very, very.
Really?
You're right in what you're saying. I think externally sometimes, if you look at the broader football media landscape or football fan landscape, we're probably not as known as we could be. I agree with that. We're only like kind of building up our brand now. But in the football industry, we're very, very famous.
Yeah.
In that way, we are respected by the clubs because they buy our players and they know the quality of what they're getting, both on the character they bring in and also the football education we provide. So that I know from the feedback when we sell to whatever we sell to Premier League or Italy or La Liga or Portugal, that's the feedback we get. And we can also see they play. That's of course, a big track record for us, because if they just went out and 2 years later came home, then of course we have failed. They haven't failed, we have failed, but no one comes home. That's a key for us. That they continue their road outside in the big industry. So that's kind of one dimension. Then I would say, without mentioning names, because I don't think people would like that, but last season we had 3 Premier League coaches visiting us.
Brilliant.
So people on the highest level is aware, and they come a little bit maybe in disguise or in hiding, but they know we're good at something, and they would like to see what we're doing. And we have an open door policy, so we actually open the doors for them to see basically everything. They can watch the first team training, they can follow the analysis session, both because we have nothing to hide, and secondly because what makes us better is actually guests coming in, observing, and then starting to ask questions, which is a good thing for us, because then we have to reflect about what we're doing, and there can come some questions where maybe we are not clear, or also questions that provoke us to think maybe we should update this, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we actually like to have visitors and guests. So I know it's sometimes it's tough, especially in FC Nordsjælland, because the team on the ground there needs to deal with a lot of logistics of whether it's the German FA or the English FA or whoever is coming by with coaches or specialists or whatever. But it's a big part of us to give something back and inspire. And can we inspire someone? I mean, would someone copy us? We would be proud.
Yeah.
I would still say, in a cynical world, the football world, I should say also good luck if you want to copy us, because you need minimum 15 years of work to
Yeah.
build up. It's far beyond when I started my dream. You need a long track record. Just building a football academy, I mean, rule of thumb, it takes 7 to 10 years to see the actual outcome of your work. So who's willing to wait for that? Is not easy to find.
Yeah. And as from your perspective, and you haven't got to give anything away here, but do you have plans to extend even further and build more teams within your group?
Only if it makes sense from a pathway point of view. That's kind of the back to the San Diego example. San
Yeah.
Diego was only added because we saw suddenly part of my team and role is of course to ensure the global pipeline, we call it, is intact and constantly evolving, so the teams have enough top players to come from, and of course also which I'm accountable for in the end, from a financial point of view, that we are sustainable. And this model only works by selling football players. That's a fact. It's a big part
Yeah.
of the business part of the model. So of course we kind of ensure that what's coming through in Ghana, what's coming through in Denmark, what's coming through in Egypt, what's coming through in San Diego. Then of course we have scouts also working, for example, like I mentioned, in Ivory Coast or other markets, where can we top up the groups potentially if we need to. We have a good name in West Africa. Kids want to play for us because of the track record. They want to follow Mohamed Kudus or Ernest Noama and so on. Or in Scandinavia, the same. They want to be the next Schillerup or Mathias Jensen. So of course, if it's suddenly it makes sense to say, hey, can we add, whether it's an academy in a country, we need to add more to the pipeline, or it's, let's say, we need another pathway because it makes sense. Then I'm sure we'll look into it. The owners are great, innovative people. The Mansour family, who is for me the perfect owners in football. Calm and still very strategic orientated and involved, but also let the people they hired execute the strategy and extremely open-minded for evolving if it's needed. So we're in a good place now. I mean, you could argue that we opened in Egypt in 2021 and San Diego in 2025. So we have actually expanded quite a lot if you just look our 5-year bandwidth. But that's also who we are. We never stand still. So you never know.
And you're definitely right in saying that pipeline is being topped up. I know for a fact that there's some top talents at Nordsjælland, especially at the moment, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of those players we'll see in some of the top leagues in the next 1 or 2 years. What I'll do as well, Mads, is I'll put a description for everyone to the Right to Dream website, so you can check it out and you can check out the socials if you want to read a little bit more about it. We're going to finish on the end section now, Mads. So
Sure.
part of our group is we're having conversations with some great football people, trying to build our football community. But we've got a game that we've developed, which is called Football Blackjack. So it's going to be. You said you're a bit of a football geek, so we're going to test some of your football knowledge. We're doing this retrospectively on last season, but when it comes to the new season, people will be able to make a selection of their players, and they're aiming for 21 goals. So they get to pick 4 players. They're aiming for 21 goals collectively, but all of those 4 players need to score at least 1 goal for you to be active. So we've run it for the past few years offline, and this is the first year that we've actually created an app for it, so more people can enjoy the game that we're enjoying. So we're going to do last season, so the 24-25 season in the Premier League. So what we'll do here, Mads, is you'll give me a name. You're aiming for 21 goals between the 4 people. You give me a name. I'll look it up on our app. We've got a stats section. I'll search it up, and I'll tell you what number you're on, and we'll try and work up to 21. Make sense?
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, it's an interesting exercise. Van Dijk.
Van Dijk. So Van Dijk last season got 3 goals. So you're on 3.
Yeah, Mikkel Damsgaard. I'll go with my own.
Oh, I'm surprised. Damsgaard last season got 2 goals. I think he got quite a lot of assists last season.
He's on the assist route. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was like 10 assists or something like that. So you're on 5. You got 2 more selections. 5.
And I have to hit the number 21. Like
that's what you're aiming for.
Was aiming for. Yeah. And, yeah. Christian Isak. Or we are above potentially.
Your boss 23 he got. He got 23. Let's have a look and see I wonder what Kudus got last year. But not easy, right? 5 Kudus got 5 last year.
It's an interesting one, yeah.
So I was doing fantasy football. I'm not sure if it's big in
I know
Denmark.
what it is. Yeah.
But every Christmas, I got to Christmas and I just sort of gave up because it's a lot of admin and it's got a lot of selection and stuff. But this is quite a nice game where you just pick your 4 players at the start of the season and then you just hope that you've got a good strategy. This year, I've done I've done rubbish. I'm on like 13. It's just not worked out for me.
My
But,
strategy also failed. I wanted to go short on the first, and then I wanted to
yeah.
pick someone that made me very close, and then I want to pick a defender that scored 1 goal. That was my strategy.
And that's the thing. Everyone's got a different strategy. I tend to
Yeah.
try and go for people I think are going to get me sort of like 5-ish goals each.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work out like that. Like Danny Welbeck has another storming season or something like that and gets over 10 goals. Or someone gets a bad injury, and that obviously affects your score. So, that's the game. The app's out now. But yeah, Mads, massive thank you for coming onto the podcast and telling us about your journey and about Right to Dream. As I said, I'll share more information with everyone on the description, but please check it out and share it with your mates. For now, Mads, goodbye and thank you.
Thank you.